Hello, and thank you for joining us again at Voice of Rohingya Radio. We are a registered nonprofit coming to you from the state of Oregon in the United States of America. I would like to take some time to thank all of our listeners who allow this program to continue providing the latest news through our exclusive interviews, reports from inside the border, and reputable sources from around the world. If you would like to stay up to date with our program, you can find all of our broadcasts online at youtube.com/VOR radio, or you can join our Facebook page to find more information on past and future programs. It has also come to my attention that listeners in some countries with bandwidth constraints are having a difficult time viewing our YouTube broadcasts, so for your convenience, I will now be posting a link to download our program in the description section of our YouTube videos. It is May 11th, 2014. For Voice of Rohingya Radio, I am your host, Zach Taylor. Our top story today comes after the United States House of Representatives unanimously passed House Resolution 418 on Wednesday. H.R. 418 is the first bill of its kind, adding language specific to the Rohingya ethnic group in Myanmar and other persecuted Burmese minorities. For details on this victory, I spoke again with Dr. Udin, Director General of the Arakan Rohingya Union yesterday, in an exclusive interview for Voice of Rohingya Radio. Dr. Udin, could you please describe the language of the resolution for our listeners who are unfamiliar with the bill?
Yes, House Resolution 418 was specifically about Rohingya human rights and Rohingya political rights. It is not like other resolution we had in the past about Burma or other ethnic minorities. It is specifically addressing the issue of Rohingya. In this resolution, there are several points they are looking at U.S. Congress. Point one, starting from urging Burmese government to end the persecution of Rohingya people and respect internationally recognized human rights for all ethnic groups and religious groups within Burma, including Rohingya. This is kind of general. And then they went into IDPs. Internally displaced person Rohingya, 140,000 Rohingya living in IDP camps, and also they mentioned Rohingya living in other countries such as Bangladesh, Malaysia, and others. So they addressed that issue, including 140,000 inside Arakan State in IDP camps. And of course, very important one is citizenship issue, 1982 citizenship law that has deprived Rohingya of citizenship. And then it went on to mentioning that Rohingya people have historically experienced a lot of severe legal, economic, and social discrimination, including restrictions on travel, higher education, you cannot work in the government services, and so on and so forth. And then we talked about marriage restriction, the government not allowing Rohingya to get married without getting permission, and getting that permission is an uphill battle for Rohingya couple to get married. They talked about forcefully relocating Rohingya into relief camps, and those relief camps, lack of decent shelters, access to clean water, food, sanitation, healthcare, and the ability to support themselves with life-sustaining materials, and anyway, of course, education. And then one serious issue they also mentioned in the resolution is two-child policy, very controversial. That is only restricted, imposed on Rohingya among all other ethnic minorities and Burman themselves. So they are very critical of that two-child policy targeting a Rohingya population. And then went into persecution of Rohingya, arbitrary arrest, detention, extortion, the increase of that, and violence against not only Muslims, Rohingya Muslims, but also other Muslims, Pante and Pati Muslims, generally known as Myanmar Muslims, but now more defined, more particular groups as Muslims in Central Burma. So they touched upon the Meitila and violence against Myanmar Muslims in Meitila, and even in Tandwe, the commands were attacked. Command Muslims were attacked, and they mentioned that in the resolution. Then it went to freedom of worship, and the closure of mosque and Islamic education institutions, basically a religious freedom they're talking about. And then they end up with saying a larger troubling pattern. Rohingya against Rohingya Muslim and Myanmar Muslims, Pathi and Panthe Muslims and Khmer Muslims, there are larger pattern of violence against them. So these are the contents of points in the resolution, and their resolve is a unanimous vote on the House floor, bipartisan support from Democrats and Republicans, not a single negative vote, and this is very, very significant. Basically, Congress is calling on the government of Burma to end all forms of persecution and discrimination of Rohingya people and ensure respect for internationally recognized human rights for all ethnic and religious minorities. That's one result. And second thing was calling on the government of United States, the international community, and both the government of the United States and the international community to put consistent pressure on government of Burma to take all necessary measures to end persecution and discrimination of Rohingya people and to protect their fundamental rights of all ethnic and religious minority groups in Burma. So they have been resolved.
What does this resolution mean in a practical sense for the cause, and what kind of demands is the United States now making of Myanmar?
This is a historic bill for Rohingya as well as from Americans in this country, because such a bill addressing a specific minority groups in the world, such as Rohingya. Rohingya people have never experienced that in this country. So first time in the history of the United States, a resolution on Rohingya human rights and political rights has taken place. That means American people have spoken. You see, this congressmen are representing their constituencies. So they are basically voting, speaking out on behalf of their constituency as American people. So American public is becoming more and more aware of what's going on in Burma in Rohingya issues, because you see New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, all these newspapers almost daily. You can read something coming up. So these congressmen are reading those articles and reports. You remember how much writers have reported with human trafficking and other violations of human rights, Pulitzer Prize winning articles they have written. So this is significant. That is historic. And future direction, what it means for the future. It laid the foundation of future American policy on Rohingya. It is institutionalized. State Department has engaged in the Rohingya issue for over 2 decades, but they are State Department specific procedures, and they did that on their own with the U.S. government policy without any legislation. Now it comes to law. And now another thing is, this is in the House, and then now it will pave the way to future actions in the Senate. Because of this resolution, we can have subsequent events in U.S. Congress, not only in the House, but also in the Senate. So it also paved the way for future Senate resolution, future Senate actions. Its implication is long-term U.S. policy, established U.S. policy. It will be precisely defined. And then it goes to United Nations also. United Nations will see that. European countries will see that. And OIC countries, 57 member states have been very supportive of Rohingya issue through ARU, Arkan Rohingya Union, because they recognize Arkan Rohingya Union as a legitimate representation of Rohingya worldwide. ARU has been instrumental, Arkan Rohingya Union and the Burmese Rohingya Association of North America, BRANA, with the help and assistance from Just Consulting, our lobbyist, renamed as Grybowski Global Strategies. That's a new name for that lobbyist firm. So this is significant for ARU as well, because we have achieved something because we worked so hard for this resolution and it passed. And unanimous vote is something that we are very thrilled about.
Dr. Udine, thank you so much for taking your time today.
It's my pleasure.
Once again, that was Director General for the Arakan Rohingya Union, Dr. Udine. You are listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio. Thank you again for listening to Voice of Rohingya Radio, a registered non-profit organization coming to you from the state of Oregon in the United States of America. I am your host, Zach Taylor. We move now to the ongoing humanitarian aid shortage affecting at least 140,000 internally displaced Rohingya in Myanmar after the expulsion of Doctors Without Borders earlier this year. On Thursday, the Washington Post reported a story of a Rohingya woman pregnant with twins whose due date tragically fell a few weeks after NGO medical help was driven out of the Sitwe area where she and her husband stayed at an IDP camp. The 20-year-old Zara Begum suspected something was wrong with the pregnancy when the kicking stopped, but when the pain started shooting through her body, all doubt was erased. There are reports almost daily about deaths, many of them pregnant women experiencing complications that could have been prevented, according to aid workers and Rohingya in the camps. With the local physician unavailable, Mrs. Begum was directed to Sitwe General Hospital in Rakhine capital. Like others in the camp, Begum had heard rumors that several Rohingya admitted to the hospital had not made it out alive, though foreign aid workers said they have not observed Buddhist doctors treating Rohingya improperly. After being convinced by a small Red Cross outfit, she eventually went to the Sitwe hospital 3 days later. One baby was believed to have died several days before the other, and sepsis may have set in by the time she was admitted. After her surgery, however, Begum appeared to be in a stable condition, spending a week in recovery and being given a release date of April 25th. Hours before she was due to go home, a doctor led her to another room, saying she just needed one final injection. Then moments later, she was pronounced dead. A doctor at the hospital would not comment about Begum's case, but said, "We do what we can." We go now to Europe, where Swedish Parliament held a hearing on the Rohingya crisis on Thursday, Rohingya blogger reported. The hearing was hosted by Mehmet Kaplan of the Green Party and organized by the Swedish Rohingya Association, the Swedish Burma Committee, and the Swedish Muslims for Peace and Justice. More than 60 people were in attendance at the hearing, including members from NGOs, journalists and medias from Sweden, and Burmese refugees from Stockholm. Abul Kalam, head of the Swedish Rohingya Association, criticized Myanmar's census, which was supported by the Swedish government. He explained that the census created more anti-Rohingya campaigns in Myanmar, and that the term Rohingya wasn't allowed to be registered, and many have been threatened to be registered as Bengali. Rangoon-based democracy activist Ms. Zinmar Aung said at the meeting that the government is playing a role to keep their power, and that the international community has to put much pressure to achieve genuine peace in Burma. The Organization of Islamic Cooperation appointed a new envoy to Myanmar yesterday. The OIC said in a statement Saturday that former Malaysian Foreign Minister Dato Seri Syed Ahmed Albar would offer smoother diplomatic relations between Myanmar on one side and regional and international partners on the other in order to achieve peaceful coexistence and restore social harmony through a comprehensive dialogue. Secretary General of the OIC said he was confident Albar, who is a veteran statesman, would be capable of achieving his objectives. San Diego Jewish World reported on House Resolution 418 on Thursday. Representative Elliot L. Engel, the ranking Democrat on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, delivered their remarks in support of H.R. 418, urging the government of Burma to end the persecution of the Rohingya people and respect internationally recognized human rights for all ethnic and religious minority groups within Burma. Engel urged his colleagues to join him in the support for the resolution, saying, quote, "If Burma truly seeks to rejoin the international community, the manner in which it treats its own people will be a key marker of the government's sincerity. Burma must abide by human rights principles of equality and human dignity, and this resolution calls upon the Burmese government to do just that." Some are asking the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, to give serious consideration to the plight of Rohingya in Myanmar, especially as ASEAN heads of state and leaders will gather at Naypyidaw Da yesterday and today, as the Myanmar Insider's article detailed on Friday. Supporters of the notion said that the Rohingya issue must become a major task of the ASEAN body in order to build a people-centered ASEAN where all communities, irrespective of majority and minority, can experience peace and prosperity. A roundtable discussion on April 17th entitled Human Rights Violations and Remedies, the Rohingya Case, identified 5 major concerns with finding an immediate solution to the Rohingya crisis. Citing basic internationally observed human rights standards, Rohingya citizenship, systematic oppression, land confiscation, education, and healthcare among other concerns. The Roundtable's findings ended with a call to the Asian Intergovernmental Human Rights Commission and the international community to take the violations seriously, as there is strong evidence that another Rwanda is in the making, and requested prompt and concrete initiatives that it deemed are urgently needed to solve the Rohingya crisis as the least humanitarians can do to help. I'd like to thank you again for tuning in today to Voice of Rohingya Radio. As always, you can view and download our broadcasts at youtube.com/VOR Radio, and you can join our page on Facebook for more information on the program. I close today with a quote from the late great anti-apartheid leader Nelson Mandela, who said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." For Voice of Rohingya Radio, I am Zach Taylor, signing out.